I am Caleb, 29 years old, and tonight was supposed to be the night my family buried me under their lies forever. Before I tell you how I exposed a $200,000 theft that destroyed my entire family, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The smell of roasted turkey and expensive pine candles usually brings people comfort. But for me, walking into my parents' estate in Connecticut, that smell just made my stomach turn. I parked my rusted sedan a block away. I didn't want it seen next to the lineup of luxury vehicles in the driveway. It wasn't about shame. It was about survival. I knew that if I parked that beat-up car next to my brother's brand new ride, the insults would start before I even took my coat off. My hands were shaking as I adjusted my tie in the rearview mirror. It was a cheap tie, polyester, bought from a discount bin. It was the best I could afford. I worked double shifts all week at the diner just to buy a decent shirt for this dinner. My mother, Linda, had called me 3 times to remind me not to look like a beggar because Grandma Margaret was coming home from Europe. Grandma Margaret. She was the matriarch, the Iron Lady of our family. She had spent the last 4 years living in a villa in Tuscany, enjoying her retirement after decades of running a steel empire. She was tough, fair, and terrifyingly sharp. And she was the only reason I was walking into this lion's den tonight. I walked up the stone pathway. The house was massive, a testament to my parents' obsession with appearance. Pillars, manicured hedges, lights that probably cost more than my annual rent. I rang the doorbell, and the heavy oak door swung open. It wasn't a servant. It was Julian, my older brother, the golden child. Well, look who decided to show up, Julian sneered, leaning against the doorframe. He was holding a crystal glass of scotch. He looked like a model out of a magazine. Tailored suit, perfect hair, and that arrogant smirk that I wanted to wipe off his face. Did you take the bus, Caleb? Or did you walk? Merry Christmas to you too, Julian, I said, stepping past him. The heat of the house hit me, carrying the sound of classical music and polite laughter. Don't eat too much, Julian whispered as I passed. Mom says the catering bill is already high enough without you packing a doggy bag for your little basement apartment. I ignored him. I had to. If I engaged, I would lose my temper, and tonight was too important for that. I walked into the dining hall. The chandelier sparkled above a table set for 12. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and a centerpiece that looked like a small forest. My parents, Robert and Linda, were holding court near the fireplace. My father looked distinguished in his velvet jacket, swirling his drink. My mother was dripping in diamonds, laughing a little too loudly at a joke from one of their wealthy neighbors. When they saw me, the laughter didn't stop, but the warmth vanished from their eyes. Caleb, my father said, his voice flat, you made it. Try to stay in the corner, will you? The senator is coming by later. Nice to see you too, Dad, I muttered. Then the room shifted. The air changed. Grandma Margaret entered from the hallway. She looked frail but held herself with the posture of a queen. She was using a cane now, something I hadn't seen before, but her eyes were just as piercing blue as I remembered. When she saw me, her face lit up, a genuine smile that made my chest ache. Caleb, she exclaimed, bypassing my parents and Julian to come straight to me. She hugged me, and she smelled like lavender and old money. My boy, let me look at you. She pulled back, her hands gripping my shoulders. Her smile faltered slightly as she took in my appearance. She noticed the fraying collar of my shirt. She noticed the dark circles under my eyes from working 60-hour weeks. She noticed the rough, calloused hands of a man who scrubs dishes and carries heavy trays, not the soft hands of a doctor. You look tired, Caleb, she said softly. Are the residency hours that bad? I told you Harvard would work you to the bone. My heart stopped. My throat went dry. I started, but my mother swooped in like a hawk. Mother, come sit, Linda said, grabbing Grandma's arm and pulling her away from me. Caleb is just exhausted from his lifestyle choices. You know how millennials are, burning the candle at both ends. Lifestyle choices? Grandma frowned, allowing herself to be led to the head of the table. Medical school isn't a lifestyle choice, Linda. It's a vocation. We all sat down. The dinner began. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I sat at the far end of the table, opposite Julian. He was preening, telling a story about his latest investment venture in tech. It's all about leverage, Grandma, Julian said, gesturing with his fork. You have to spend money to make money. That's why I upgraded my transportation. Image is everything in this business. Is that so? Grandma said, sipping her wine. She didn't look impressed. And how is the business doing, Julian? Last I heard, you were pivoting again. Booming. My father interjected quickly. Julian is a visionary, just like I was. I looked down at my plate. I was starving. I hadn't eaten since breakfast because I was saving money for rent. But I couldn't swallow. I knew what was coming. I had been dreading this conversation for 4 years. And you, Caleb? Grandma's voice cut through the room, silencing the clinking silverware. Tell me about Harvard. You must be close to graduating. Have you chosen a specialty? Cardiology? Neurology? The table went silent. My mother stiffened. My father cleared his throat loudly. Julian took a long sip of his wine, watching me with a predatory gaze. I looked up at my grandmother. I saw pride in her eyes. She thought she was looking at a future doctor. She thought her grandson was saving lives. Grandma, I whispered. My voice cracked. I'm not in Harvard. The silence stretched. It was painful. What? Grandma asked, confused. Did you transfer? Yale? Johns Hopkins? No, I said, my hands clenching the napkin in my lap. I'm not in medical school. I never went. Crash. My father slammed his wine glass down. That's enough, Caleb. Not tonight. But Grandma ignored him. Her eyes narrowed on me. What do you mean you never went? You were accepted. I saw the letter. We celebrated. I couldn't go, Grandma, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I couldn't afford the tuition. Couldn't afford it? Grandma's voice rose, sharp and dangerous. What are you talking about? I sent the money. I wired $200,000 to your father's account specifically for your tuition 4 years ago. I froze. $200,000. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I looked at my parents. They were pale. My mother was trembling, her hand covering her mouth. My father was glaring at me with pure hatred. I never got a penny, I stammered. Tears welled up in my eyes. Tears of frustration, of exhaustion, of 4 years of hell. Grandma, I'm working as a waiter. I serve tables at the Golden Fork downtown. I live in a basement. I barely make rent. A waiter. Grandma stood up. She slammed her hand on the table, rattling the fine china. I gave you $200,000 for Harvard. Why are you working as a waiter? Because they told me you didn't send anything. I screamed back, the dam finally breaking. They told me you changed your mind. They told me you said I wasn't smart enough and that you wouldn't waste your money on a failure like me. The room went deathly silent. My brother, Julian, choked on his wine. He started coughing, turning red, hacking into his napkin. But no one looked at him. Grandma slowly turned her head toward my father. Her face was no longer the face of a loving mother. It was the face of a CEO who just discovered embezzlement in her company. Robert, she said. Her voice was ice cold. Is this true? Mother, he's lying. My father sputtered, standing up. He's confused. He's mentally unstable. We tried to help him. I'm not unstable, I shouted, standing up too. My legs were shaking, but I didn't sit down. I'm poor, Dad. There's a difference. Sit down, Caleb, my mother shrieked. Don't ruin Christmas with your lies. Lies. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You want truth? I brought truth. I reached into my worn-out jacket pocket. I felt the thick envelope inside. It was heavy. It contained the evidence that would blow this family apart. I didn't just come for the turkey, I said. pulling the envelope out. I came for my life back. Before I open that envelope, you need to understand what they took from me. It wasn't just money. It was 4 years of my life. It was my dream. Let me take you back to the day it happened. 4 years ago, I was 25. I remember the mailman handing me the thick envelope with the crimson Harvard seal. I sat on the porch of this very house, my hands trembling as I tore it open. "Congratulations," it read. I screamed. I literally screamed with joy. I had done it. I had studied late into the night, sacrificed my social life, and worked my tail off to get that acceptance letter. I ran inside to find my parents. "Mom, Dad, I got in. Harvard Medical School." My father looked up from his newspaper. My mother glanced over from her iPad. There was no hugging, no popping of champagne. "That's nice, Caleb," my father said, turning a page. "But how do you plan to pay for it?" My smile faded. "Well, the tuition is high, but I can get loans," and I thought, Grandma said she would help? She promised. My mother sighed, a long, dramatic sound she used whenever I was being difficult. "Caleb, honey, Grandma is in Europe. She's forgetting things. She doesn't have that kind of liquidity anymore. And honestly, we can't support you. Business is tight." "But she promised," I insisted. "Let me call her." "No," my father snapped. "Do not bother your grandmother. She is frail. Asking her for money would kill her. Do you want to kill your grandmother, Caleb?" That was the guilt trip, the weapon they always used. So I believed them. I declined the offer. I watched my dream die in a single afternoon. The next 4 years were a blur of misery. I moved out because my parents said they couldn't afford to feed another mouth. I got a job waiting tables at a high-end steakhouse. Do you know what it's like to serve a steak that costs more than your weekly grocery budget? Do you know what it's like to have people snap their fingers at you like you're a dog? "Hey boy, more water. This soup is cold. Take it back." I swallowed my pride every single day. My feet bled from standing for 12-hour shifts. My back ached constantly. I lived on leftover bread rolls and tap water. I lived in a damp basement apartment with a leaky pipe that the landlord refused to fix. The mold made me cough at night, but I couldn't afford to move. And while I was scraping gum off the bottom of tables, my brother, Julian, was living like a king. Julian, the genius, the entrepreneur. 6 months after I was told there was no money, Julian drove into the driveway in a brand new Lamborghini Huracan. I'll never forget it. It was bright yellow, screaming for attention. The engine roared like a beast, shaking the windows of the house. I was visiting to pick up some old boxes, and I stood there, frozen, my shoes full of holes, staring at a car that cost $250,000. "Nice, right?" Julian grinned, stepping out. He tossed the keys in the air. "It's a signing bonus. My startup is going to the moon, baby." "What startup?" I asked. "The crypto thing? It's complicated, Caleb. You wouldn't understand high finance," he scoffed. "Stick to the appetizers." My parents came out beaming. My mother ran her hand over the sleek hood of the Lamborghini. "Oh, Julian, it's magnificent. You deserve it, sweetheart. You work so hard." "Dad, Mom," I said quietly, "you said business was tight. But Julian buys a Lamborghini? Julian earns his own money," my father barked. "Don't be jealous, Caleb. It's ugly. Maybe if you had half his drive, you wouldn't be a waiter." Jealousy? No. It was confusion. It was hurt. A year later, it was a Porsche 911 GT3, a sleek, black monster of a car. Julian posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Another toy for the collection. #blessed #hustle." I was looking at that photo on my cracked phone screen while sitting in a laundromat because I couldn't afford a washer and dryer. I zoomed in on the photo. In the background, I could see my parents' garage. I could see my father's new golf clubs. I could see my mother's new designer handbag sitting on the porch. Everyone was thriving. Everyone except me. I became the black sheep, the failure. My parents stopped inviting me to events unless they needed someone to help set up chairs. They told the neighbors I was finding myself. They told Grandma lies to keep her from asking questions. Caleb is traveling, they told her. Caleb is so busy with studies he can't call. They intercepted her letters. They blocked her number on my phone when I visited. They isolated me perfectly. But the worst part wasn't the poverty. It was the belief that my grandmother, the one person who had always believed in me, had abandoned me. That hurt more than the hunger. I spent nights lying on my lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was wrong with me. Why wasn't I good enough? Why did Grandma lie? Why did my parents hate me? I almost gave up. I almost accepted that this was my life. Serving rich people, cleaning up their messes, and being the disappointment of the Hanson family. But then the cracks started to show. And tonight, standing in this dining room, listening to the hum of the refrigerator that cost more than my car, remembering the sound of that Lamborghini engine revving, I felt a fire in my chest. The sadness was gone. The shame was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard rage. They hadn't just stolen money. They had stolen me. They had stolen the doctor I was supposed to be. And looking at Julian now, wiping wine off his chin, looking at my parents exchanging panicked glances, I knew. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the prosecutor, the judge, and the executioner. Back in the dining room, the silence was broken by Julian's nervous laughter. He stood up, wiping the wine stain on his shirt with a napkin. He decided to play the offense. That was always his strategy. Attack before you get attacked. Grandma, please, Julian said. His voice smooth but his eyes darting around the room. You can't honestly believe him. Look at him. Look at his clothes. Look at his desperation. He walked around the table, approaching me like a shark circling wounded prey. Caleb has had issues, Grandma, Julian lied. We didn't want to tell you because we wanted to protect you. He got into gambling, online poker, crypto scams. He lost his way. That's a lie, I said, my voice steady. Is it? Julian countered, turning to Grandma. He came to us begging for money constantly. We gave him cash and he blew it. He didn't go to Harvard because he gambled away his deposit. Mom and Dad were too ashamed to tell you. My mother, Linda, latched onto this narrative like a lifeline. She stood up, tears instantly springing to her eyes. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. It's true, Mother, she sobbed. We tried so hard. We tried to get him into rehab. We paid off his debts. That's why business has been tight. We've been draining our savings to keep Caleb out of jail. Jail? I stared at her in disbelief. I have never even had a speeding ticket. Denial is the first stage of addiction, my father said solemnly, shaking his head. We didn't want to burden you in Europe, Margaret. We wanted you to enjoy your golden years. We took on the burden of Caleb's failures. Grandma looked between us. She looked at my parents, dressed in silk and velvet, looking successful and concerned. Then she looked at me in my cheap suit and worn-out shoes. Doubt flickered in her eyes. That was the most painful moment of the night, seeing her doubt me. Caleb, Grandma said softly, is this true? Did you gamble the money? I never received the money, I shouted. How could I gamble what I never had? He's lying, Julian yelled, slamming his hand on the table. He's a pathological liar. He's just here to scam you again. Get out. Caleb, get out of this house before I call the police. Call them, I challenged. Go ahead, Julian. Call the police. I'd love to talk to them. Julian froze. He didn't pick up his phone. You see, my father said quickly. He's aggressive. He's unstable. Caleb, please, for the love of God, just leave. We can talk about this tomorrow. We'll write you a check. Just go. They were trying to buy me off. They were trying to push me out the door before the truth could come out. I'm not going anywhere, I said, gripping the envelope in my hand tighter. Grandma, Julian said, changing tactics. He's jealous. He's always been jealous of me. He sees my success, my cars, my company, and he can't handle it. He wants to tear us down because he's a loser. Your company? I asked quietly. You mean Prestige Ventures LLC? Julian's face went pale. The color drained from his skin so fast it looked like he was about to faint. How do you know that name? He whispered. And you, Dad? I turned to my father. How is the consulting firm doing? The one registered in the Cayman Islands. My father dropped his glass. It didn't break, but it rolled across the table, spilling red wine onto the white tablecloth like blood. What are you doing, Caleb? My mother hissed. Stop this. You called me unstable, I said, stepping closer to the table. You called me a gambler. You called me a failure. But for the last 6 months, while you thought I was scrubbing dishes, I was doing something else. I was doing homework. I looked at Grandma. Her eyes were wide, sensing the shift in power. She wasn't looking at my clothes anymore. She was looking at my eyes, and she saw the truth. Grandma, I said, they told you I was traveling. They told you I was busy. But the truth is, I was 5 miles away, serving pasta to your friends, hiding my face so they wouldn't recognize me. And every night, I went home and wondered why you hated me. I never hated you, Grandma whispered. I loved you. I sent you everything. I know, I said. I know you did, and I found where it went. Caleb, don't you dare. Julian lunged at me. He actually tried to grab the envelope from my hand. But I was ready. I've been carrying trays of heavy food for 4 years. My arms were stronger than they looked. I shoved him back. He stumbled and fell into his chair, knocking it over. Sit down, Julian, I commanded. My voice boomed in the large room. It was the first time I had ever raised my voice to my older brother. He sat there, stunned, on the floor. You wanted to know about my lifestyle choices, I said to the room. You wanted to talk about money. Let's talk about money. I threw the envelope onto the table. It slid across the smooth surface and stopped right in front of Grandma's plate. Open it, I said to her. My mother lunged for it. No, Mother. Don't. Don't touch it, Linda. Grandma snapped. The command was so sharp, so authoritative, that my mother recoiled as if she'd been slapped. The steel tycoon was back. Grandma reached out with a trembling hand. She picked up the envelope. She opened the clasp. I didn't come alone, I said, looking at the door. I brought receipts. Grandma held the documents in her hands, her reading glasses perched on her nose. But before she reads them to you, I need to tell you how I got them. It started 3 months ago at the restaurant. It was a Tuesday night, slow shift. A man walked in, Mr. Henderson. I recognized him immediately. He was the personal banker for our family for 20 years. He used to give me lollipops when I was a kid. I tried to hide. I asked another waiter to take his table. But we were short-staffed. I had to go. Water, please, Mr. Henderson said without looking up from his menu. Then he glanced at me. He did a double take. Caleb? Caleb Hansen. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Hello, Mr. Henderson. My God, son. What are you doing here? I thought you were... Well, your father said you were in Europe doing a fellowship. No, sir, I said, forcing a smile. Just... working. He looked confused. He lowered his voice. Is everything all right? I know the trust fund was liquidated a few years ago for your tuition, but surely there's something left for living expenses. I almost dropped the water pitcher. Trust fund? What trust fund? The education trust, Mr. Henderson said, frowning. Your grandmother set it up. It was fully funded. $200,000. It was cleared out 4 years ago. The withdrawal stated tuition and housing. My world spun. I excused myself and ran to the bathroom. I threw up. That was the moment. The moment I realized it wasn't just negligence. It wasn't just, we don't have money. It was theft. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I went to the bank. I wasn't an account holder on my parents' accounts, but I was the beneficiary of the trust. I had rights. Mr. Henderson, bless his heart, was suspicious of my reaction the night before. He helped me, He couldn't give me everything, but he gave me enough. He gave me the transaction dates. But I needed more. I needed to know where the money went after it left the trust. That's where Sarah came in. Sarah is the manager at the restaurant. She's tough, street smart, and her ex-husband is a forensic accountant. When I told her the story, she didn't pity me. She got angry. "We're going to nail them," Sarah said. We spent nights digging. We searched public records. We looked up property registrations. We matched dates. It was like putting together a horrifying puzzle. I found out that on August 15th, 4 years ago, 2 days after I was told there was no money, a transfer of $150,000 was made from my father's joint account to a luxury car dealership in Miami. The same week Julian got the yellow Lamborghini. I found out that Prestige Ventures LLC, Julian's company, had no employees, no products, and no office. Its registered address was a P.O. box in a strip mall, but it received monthly transfers from my parents' accounts labeled consulting fees. I found out that my father had lost his license to practice finance 5 years ago due to unethical conduct, a fact he had hidden from everyone, especially Grandma. They were broke. They were drowning in debt, keeping up appearances by cannibalizing the family money. My money. I compiled everything. Every bank statement Mr. Henderson could legally give me. Every public record of the cars. Every fake business registration. I put it all in that envelope. Back in the dining room, Grandma was flipping through the pages. Her hand was shaking, but her eyes were laser-focused. "This," Grandma whispered. "This is the transfer record." "Keep reading, Grandma," I said. "Look at the date. Look at the destination account." My father was sweating profusely. He was tugging at his collar. "Margaret, please. These are complicated financial maneuvers. Tax purposes. You wouldn't understand the modern market." "I ran a Fortune 500 company, Robert," Grandma shouted without looking up. "I know how to read a bank statement." She stopped on a page. She gasped. "The Lamborghini," she whispered. She looked up at Julian, who was still on the floor, looking like a pouting child. You bought a car?" "It was an investment," Julian cried. "Classic cars appreciate in value. I was managing the portfolio." "You drove it to the beach house," Grandma yelled. "You posted pictures of it. You bought a toy with your brother's future. And look at the next page," I said, pointing. "The remaining 50,000. Grandma turned the page. "Online gambling debts," she read. "Casino Royal. Bet 365. She looked at my father. "That's yours, isn't it, Robert?" Grandma asked. Her voice was trembling with disgust. "You told me Caleb was the gambler. But this account, it's linked to your social security number." "I have a problem." My father broke down, sobbing. It was pathetic. "I needed the money, Mom. I was going to win it back. I was going to pay Caleb back before he noticed." "4 years?" I asked. "You were going to pay me back for 4 years? While I was scrubbing toilets? We fed you," my mother screamed. "We gave you life. You gave me a life of misery to pay for your vanity," I shot back. Grandma stood up slowly. She closed the folder. She took a deep breath. She looked at the 3 of them, her son, her daughter-in-law, her favorite grandson, and saw them for the first time as the monsters they were. But I wasn't done. "There's one more thing," I said. "The last page." "Caleb, don't," Julian whispered. "Please." "The last page," I repeated. Grandma turned to the final document. It was the authorization form for the withdrawal of the trust fund. It required a signature from the trustee. It required Grandma's signature. But Grandma had been in Italy. She stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. "I didn't sign this," she whispered. The room felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of it. "I didn't sign this," Grandma repeated, her voice louder this time. She ran her finger over the ink on the photocopy. "I was in Florence. I remember that week. I was in the hospital for my hip surgery. I couldn't even hold a pen." She looked up, her eyes wide with horror. "This is a forgery." This was the smoking gun. Financial mismanagement is one thing. Lying is another. But forgery? Forgery is a felony. Forgery means prison time. Who signed it? Grandma demanded. She looked at my father. Did you sign my name, Robert? My father shook his head frantically. No. No, Mom. I would never. I just handled the transfer. I didn't sign it. Then who? All eyes turned to Julian, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Julian was trembling. He looked small. He looked like a cornered rat. Julian? Grandma asked, her voice breaking. I had to, Julian stammered. Dad told me to. He said we needed the money immediately or the house would be foreclosed. He said you wouldn't mind. He said you were getting old and you wouldn't notice. You forged my signature? Grandma walked over to him. She raised her hand and slapped him. Smack! The sound echoed off the high ceilings. It was the first time in 30 years anyone had ever disciplined Julian. I practiced. Julian blurted out, holding his cheek. I practiced your signature for weeks. Mom helped me. She traced it for me. Linda. Grandma turned to my mother. My mother gasped. Julian, how could you? Don't lie, Mom. Julian screamed, scrambling to his feet. He was throwing everyone under the bus to save himself. You stood right there. You said, make the loop on the M bigger. Grandma writes with a flourish. You helped me. Oh my God. I said, stepping back. Even I was shocked. I knew they were greedy, but I didn't know they were this coordinated. It was a conspiracy. A family conspiracy to defraud their own matriarch and sacrifice their own son. You stole $200,000, Grandma said, her voice shaking with rage. You stole Caleb's education. You stole his future. And you used it to buy. She looked at the papers again. A Lamborghini Huracan? A Porsche 911 GT3. They are assets. Julian cried. I look successful. People invest in me because I look rich. You are a fraud. Grandma screamed. You are nothing but a cheap con artist in an expensive suit. She turned to my father. And you, my son, you let your other son starve? I asked you about Caleb. I asked you why he never wrote. You told me he was too busy. You told me he was arrogant. He is arrogant, Dad shouted, pointing at me. Look at him, standing there judging us. He thinks he's better than us. I am better than you, I said calmly, because I earned every dollar I have. I didn't steal it from an old woman. I'm not an old woman, Grandma roared. I am the person who owns this house. I am the person who pays for your country club membership. I am the person who pays for your cars, your clothes, your food. She grabbed the tablecloth and pulled. Dishes, glasses, the turkey, the candles. Everything crashed to the floor. Red wine splattered across my mother's white silk dress. The turkey rolled onto the expensive Persian rug. My dinner, Mom shrieked. Your dinner is over, Grandma said. This family is over. She turned to me. Her anger softened into sorrow. She reached out and touched my face. Caleb, I am so sorry. I should have checked. I should have flown back. I failed you. No, Grandma, I said, holding her hand. You didn't fail me. They did. She looked at the folder on the table. The evidence of the Porsche, the Ferrari rental for the Hamptons trip, the gambling debts. This ends tonight, she said. This is the moment that changed everything. The moment I stopped being the victim and took back control of my life. If you are still watching, thank you for sticking with me through this nightmare. Please, take a second to hit the like button and comment justice for Caleb below. It helps more people see the truth about financial abuse. Your support tells me I'm not alone in this. The crash of the dinnerware was still echoing in the room when Grandma pulled out her phone. She didn't call the family therapist. She didn't call a mediator. She called Mr. Evans, her attorney. Hello, Arthur? Grandma said, her voice steady as a rock. I need you to come to the house immediately. Bring the police. I want to report a grand larceny and forgery. No, my mother screamed, falling to her knees. Mother, please, not the police. Think of the scandal. Think of our reputation. Your reputation? Grandma looked down at her. You are a thief, Linda. That is your reputation now. Grandma, I'm your grandson, Julian pleaded, crying real tears now. Tears of fear. I can't go to jail. I'm pretty. I won't survive in jail. You should have thought about that before you practiced my signature, Grandma said coldly. My father sat in his chair, staring blankly at the wall. The reality was setting in. The house of cards had collapsed. Robert, Grandma said, you have 24 hours. For what? Dad asked hoarsely. To vacate the premises, Grandma said. This house is in my name. I let you live here because I thought you were raising my grandsons. But you have turned this home into a den of vipers. Get out. But where will we go? Mom sobbed. We have no money. You know we have no money. Sell the Lamborghini, I suggested from the corner. Oh wait, you can't. It's seized evidence now. Caleb, help us. Mom crawled toward me, grabbing my leg. Talk to her. She loves you. Tell her to have mercy. We're your family. I looked down at my mother, the woman who had birthed me, the woman who had also watched me work myself to the bone for 4 years and never offered a cent, the woman who wore diamonds bought with my tuition money. Family? I asked. Family doesn't steal from each other, Mom. Family doesn't lie to destroy a person's sanity. You aren't my family. You're just people I used to know. I pulled my leg away. 30 minutes later, the flashing lights appeared in the driveway. It wasn't a quiet affair. The neighbors were watching. The police officers, Officer Miller and Officer Davis, walked in. They knew who Grandma was. Everyone in town knew Margaret Hanson. Mrs. Hanson, Officer Miller said, taking off his cap. What seems to be the trouble? These 3 people, Grandma pointed a shaking finger at my parents and Julian, have defrauded me of $200,000 through forgery and wire fraud. Here is the evidence. She handed over the envelope I had brought. And, Grandma added, I want them removed from my property. They are trespassing. Watching Julian being handcuffed was, I won't lie, it was satisfying. He cried. He begged. He tried to blame Dad again. It was him. It was his idea. My father went quietly, his head hung low. My mother was screaming at the officers, threatening to sue them, shouting, Do you know who I am? Yes, ma'am, Officer Davis said as he guided her into the cruiser. You're the suspect. As the police cars drove away, the house fell silent. The mess was still on the floor. The wine stain was seeping into the carpet. I stood there with Grandma, just the 2 of us. She looked at me and she looked 10 years older than she had an hour ago. She slumped into a chair. I ruined it, she whispered. I ruined your life, Caleb. No, I said, kneeling beside her. You saved it. Tonight you saved it. But the money, it's gone, she said. The tuition. I don't have another $200,000 sitting around liquid. It's tied up in assets. It's okay, Grandma, I said. I'm used to working hard. I'll figure it out. At least now I know the truth. That's worth more than money. No, she said firmly. She grabbed my hand. You are going to be a doctor, Caleb. I don't care if I have to sell this house. I don't care if I have to sell every piece of jewelry I own. You are going to Harvard. I smiled. For the first time in 4 years, a real, genuine smile. Thank you, Grandma. She looked around the empty, ruined dining room. Well, she said, a small sparkle returning to her eye. Since the turkey is on the floor, do you know any place that's open? I laughed. I know a diner. The burgers are greasy, but the staff is nice. I know the waiter. Lead the way, Dr. Hanson, she said. We walked out of the mansion, leaving the mess behind. We walked past the empty spot where the Lamborghini used to be. We got into my rusted sedan. And as we drove away, I didn't look back. 1 year. 365 days. That is all it took to turn the world upside down. If you could see me now, you wouldn't recognize the man who stood trembling in that dining room, clutching a folder of bank statements like a lifeline. I am standing in front of a mirror, but it isn't the cracked, foggy mirror of my basement apartment. It's a clean, bright mirror in a small but comfortable condo near the university campus. And the reflection? He isn't wearing a polyester shirt stained with grease. He is wearing a short white coat. My name is stitched on the pocket. Caleb Hansen, medical student. I run my thumb over the embroidery. Feels real. Feels heavy, but in a good way. Like an anchor that keeps me grounded. Not a weight that drags me down. The past 12 months have been a whirlwind of justice, restructuring, and hard truths. After that night at the mansion, the night we now refer to simply as the purge, Grandma Margaret didn't waste a single second. She was true to her word. The very next morning, while my parents were still being processed at the county station, Grandma hired a team of movers. She didn't just evict them. She erased them from the property. She had the locks changed before noon. She had the security codes reset. She even hired a landscaping crew to tear out my mother's prized rose garden because, as she put it, I don't want to look at anything that woman nurtured. It was ruthless. It was efficient. It was exactly the kind of leadership that had built her steel empire. But the most satisfying moment for me wasn't the eviction. It was the auction. 3 months after the arrests, the assets were liquidated to repay the debt to the trust and cover the legal fees. I was there. I shouldn't have gone, maybe. Sarah told me it was petty. But I needed to see it. I needed to see the symbols of my oppression being dismantled piece by piece. I stood in the back of the auction house as the auctioneer brought out the Lamborghini Huracan. It didn't look like a beast anymore. Under the harsh warehouse lights, stripped of its vanity plates, it just looked like a piece of yellow metal. A used car. Do I hear 150? 150? The auctioneer chanted. I watched a stranger buy it. Some tech guy in a hoodie who didn't know the history of that car. He didn't know that the leather seats were paid for with my tuition. He didn't know that the engine revving used to mock a man walking to the bus stop in the rain. When the gavel banged down, sold, I felt a knot in my chest loosen. It was gone. The yellow monster was gone. Then came the Porsche 911 GT3. Julian's pride and joy. The car he claimed proved he was a visionary. It sold for less than market value because it had a scratch on the bumper. Probably from the night Julian drunkenly backed into a mailbox. An incident he blamed on a rogue delivery driver. Watching those cars roll away on the back of transport trucks was the final closure I didn't know I needed. They were just things. And things can be taken away. My parents and Julian learned that lesson the hard way. The legal battle was short but brutal. With the overwhelming evidence I had gathered, the forensic accountant's report, the forged signature, the confession Julian blurted out in front of police officers. Their defense attorney didn't have much to work with. They took plea deals to avoid a lengthy public trial that would have exposed even more humiliating secrets. Julian got the worst of it. Because he was the one who physically forged the signature and set up the shell company, he was sentenced to 3 years in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of probation. I haven't visited him. I don't plan to, but I heard from a mutual acquaintance that prison isn't treating him well. The golden child doesn't have an audience in there. There are no investors to charm, no parents to bail him out. He is just inmate 4092, another guy who thought he was smarter than the system. My parents avoided prison time by the skin of their teeth, mostly because Grandma refused to testify against her own son in open court. She said she couldn't bear the shame of seeing the Hansen name dragged through the mud on the evening news. Instead, they received heavy suspended sentences, community service, and a court order to pay full restitution. But the real punishment was the fall. They lost everything. The mansion was sold to a nice family from New York. The country club memberships were revoked. The friends they tried so hard to impress? They vanished the moment the handcuffs clicked. I saw my father once about 2 months ago. I was walking out of the university library, carrying a stack of anatomy textbooks. I decided to grab a coffee at a small bodega on the corner. I saw a man stocking shelves in the back. He was wearing a green apron, and his hair, once dyed a rich chestnut brown to hide the gray, was now completely white and thinning. He looked 20 years older. It was my father. The man who used to sip scotch and lecture me on leverage and image. He was arguing with the manager about a break schedule. I have a bad back, my father was saying, his voice whiny and thin. I can't lift these crates. Then go home, Robert, the manager snapped. I got 10 kids waiting for this job. My father turned and saw me standing by the coffee machine. We locked eyes. I expected him to yell. I expected him to blame me, to scream that this was all my fault. But he didn't. He just looked at me. At my clean clothes, at the textbooks in my hand, at the peace in my eyes. And then he looked down. He turned his back to me and started stacking cans of beans. He was ashamed. For the first time in his life, Robert Hansen felt shame. I didn't say anything. I bought my coffee and left. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anger. I just felt nothing. He was a stranger to me now, and that indifference was the truest form of freedom. But let's talk about the good things. Let's talk about the sunrise after the long night. Medical school is hard. It is grueling. I am 10 years older than most of my classmates. While they are stressing about dating and parties, I am just grateful to be here. When I'm studying until 3 a.m. and my eyes are burning, I don't complain. I remember the smell of dirty dishwater. I remember the ache in my feet after a double shift. And suddenly, studying the brachial plexus seems like a privilege, not a chore. And I didn't do it alone. Grandma Margaret moved into a beautiful, smaller cottage near the coast. She said the mansion was haunted by greed. She seems lighter now, happier. She visits me every other weekend. We have a routine. She brings homemade cookies, which she claims are store-bought, but I know better. And I tell her about the cadaver lab or the interesting pathology lecture I attended. She pays my tuition directly to the university. Every semester, when I see the notification, paid in full, I call her. Thank you, I say. Get back to work, she replies. But I can hear the smile in her voice. And then there is Sarah. Sarah, the manager at the Golden Fork. The woman who helped me hunt down the truth when I was drowning. A few months after I started school, I went back to the restaurant. I wasn't wearing my uniform. I was wearing a button-down shirt and jeans. I walked in during the lull before the dinner rush. Sarah was at the hostess stand, frowning at a reservation book. When she looked up and saw me, her tough exterior melted. Well, she said, crossing her arms, if it isn't the guy who took down an empire. I didn't do it alone, I said. I had a pretty good partner. I pulled a small box out of my pocket. It wasn't a ring. Slow down, we aren't there yet. It was a silver stethoscope charm for her bracelet. I know you aren't a doctor, I said, but you saved my life just as much as any surgeon could. She laughed, that dry, sarcastic laugh I had come to love during our late-night venting sessions in the break room. You're cheesy, Hansen. Med school is making you soft. Maybe, I grinned. So, are you going to let me buy you dinner? Somewhere where we don't have to serve the food. She looked at me, really looked at me. Yeah, I get off at 6. Don't be late. We've been together for 8 months now. It's a different kind of relationship than what I saw growing up. My parents' marriage was a transaction, a merger of image and vanity. With Sarah, it's real. We argue about what movie to watch. We split the bill. She calls me out when I'm being stubborn, and I listen to her when she's stressed about the restaurant. It's a partnership. Last week, Sarah and I drove out to Grandma's cottage. It was a bright, crisp autumn day. The leaves were turning gold and crimson, colors that used to remind me of the Harvard rejection, but now remind me of new beginnings. We sat on Grandma's porch drinking tea. Grandma was telling Sarah embarrassing stories about me as a toddler. He used to try to bandage the cat, Grandma laughed. I knew he'd be a doctor when I saw him putting band-aids on the furniture legs because he thought the table was hurting. Sarah laughed, squeezing my hand. He's still trying to fix everything. He tries to diagnose my headaches before I even take an aspirin. I sat back, listening to the two most important women in my life laughing together. The wind blew off the ocean, salty and fresh. I thought about the timeline. For years ago, I was hopeless. 3 years ago, I was invisible. 1 year ago, I was betrayed. Today, I am Caleb. Just Caleb. I looked at my hand resting on the porch railing. It was steady. The tremors of anxiety that used to plague me were gone. "Grandma?" I asked during a lull in the conversation. "Yes, dear? Do you ever miss it? The big house? The parties? The family?" Grandma put down her teacup. She looked out at the ocean, her expression thoughtful. "I miss the idea of it," she said honestly. "I miss what I thought we had. But you can't live in a fantasy, Caleb. The house was big, but it was cold. This place," she gestured to the small, cozy porch. "This place is warm, because the truth lives here." She turned to me. "And as for family, I have my family right here." She patted my hand, then reached over and patted Sarah's hand too. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. It meant we were building something new. Something that wasn't based on bloodlines or inheritance or keeping up appearances. We were building a family based on loyalty. "By the way," Grandma added, her eyes twinkling with mischief, "I received a letter from Julian yesterday." The air grew a little tighter. "What did he say?" I asked. "He asked for money for the commissary," Grandma said. "He said the food is terrible and he needs toiletries." "What did you do?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. Grandma smiled, a sharp, steel magnate smile. "I sent him a job application for the prison cafeteria," she said. "I told him that honest work builds character. And if he works hard enough, maybe in a few years, he can afford his own snacks." We all burst out laughing. It was a good, clean laugh, the kind that cleanses the soul. "Justice," I said, raising my teacup, "is best served in a cafeteria." "Amen," Sarah said. Thanksgiving arrived again. The calendar has a cruel way of circling back to dates that carry scars. For the last 11 months, I hadn't thought much about the holiday. But as November approached, the memories of that night, the turkey on the floor, the police lights, the yelling, began to creep back in. But this year we were doing it differently. There was no catering staff. There was no 12-foot pine tree with designer ornaments. There was no senator invited to impress. It was just Grandma, Sarah, and me in the small kitchen of the seaside cottage. "Caleb, watch the stuffing," Sarah yelled, laughing as she swatted my hand away with a wooden spoon. "You're putting too much sage in it." "I'm applying precise measurements," I argued, grinning. "It's chemistry. Cooking is just edible chemistry. It's stuffing, not a science experiment." Grandma chimed in from the table where she was peeling potatoes. "Listen to Sarah. She runs a kitchen for a living. You just study books." The kitchen smelled amazing. Not the sterile, expensive smell of the mansion, but the rich, buttery smell of food being cooked with love. The windows were steamed up against the cold air outside. We sat down at a small round table. The tablecloth was checkered, bought at a local home goods store. The plates didn't match perfectly, and it was perfect. As we served the food, Grandma grew quiet. She looked at the two of us, and I saw a shimmer of tears in her eyes. "Grandma," I asked softly, "are you okay?" She took a deep breath and nodded. "I am. I was just thinking about how close I came to losing this." She put her fork down. "Caleb," she said, her voice serious, "I need to apologize to you one more time. I know I've said it, but I need you to hear it again." "Grandma, you don't—" "I do," she interrupted. "Because for 4 years, I let my comfort blind me. I assumed everything was fine because it was easier than digging for problems. I let my distance become negligence. And because of that, you suffered. You carried a burden that should have never been yours." I looked at her. I saw the guilt she still carried, despite her tough exterior. "Grandma," I said, reaching across the small table, "you didn't know. They were experts at manipulation. They fooled everyone, even the bank." "But I should have known you," she said fiercely. "I should have known that my grandson, the boy who bandaged table legs, the boy who cried when he found a hurt bird, I should have known that boy wouldn't just abandon his dreams to gamble. I should have trusted my gut, not their lies. You trust me now, I said. That's what matters. I do, she said. But I learned a hard lesson. I learned that money is a powerful anesthesia. It numbs you to reality. I used to think I was helping Robert and Linda by supporting their lifestyle. I thought I was being a good mother. But I was just feeding a monster. I was funding their delusion. She looked at the empty chair next to her. Not literally empty, but the space where a son usually sits. I realized, she continued, that giving someone everything they want is the worst thing you can do to them. Robert never had to struggle, so he never learned to value anything. Julian never had to work, so he thought he was entitled to the world. But you! She looked at me with such intense pride it made my throat tight. You struggled, Caleb. You faced the fire. And you didn't burn. You were forged. You are stronger than all of them combined. I had a good example, I said, nodding at her. The Iron Lady. She chuckled, wiping her eye. Rusty Iron Lady, maybe? To family, Sarah proposed a toast, raising her glass of apple cider. The real kind. To family, we echoed. We ate. We laughed. We didn't talk about stocks or bonds or cars. We talked about Sarah's plan to open her own bakery one day. We talked about my upcoming clinical rotations. We talked about Grandma's new gardening club. It was mundane. It was simple. And it was the richest meal I have ever eaten. Later that evening, after Sarah had gone home, I stayed to help Grandma clean up. We were washing dishes side by side at the sink. A chore my parents would have considered beneath them. Something for the help. Caleb, Grandma said, handing me a dried plate. I want you to have something. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small old key. What is this? I asked. It's a safety deposit box key, she said. I didn't lose everything in the purge. I kept the things that mattered. Inside that box is your grandfather's watch. And the deed to this cottage. I froze. Grandma, I can't. It's in your name, Caleb, she said firmly. I transferred it last week. No trusts, no middlemen, no parents to intercept it. It is yours, so that no matter what happens, you will never, ever be homeless again. You will always have a place to come back to. I looked at the key. It was cold metal, but it felt warm in my hand. I thought about the nights I spent sleeping in that damp basement, listening to the rats in the walls, wondering if I would make rent. I thought about the fear of having nowhere to go. Thank you, I whispered. I hugged her, hugging her tighter than I ever had. You earned it, she whispered back. I drove home that night under a clear, starry sky. The air was cold, signaling the coming winter, but the heater in my car worked perfectly. I thought about the journey. I thought about the deception, the $200,000 that vanished into thin air, the lies told over roast turkey, the betrayal of the people who were supposed to protect me. It would be easy to be bitter. It would be easy to let that anger rot me from the inside out, just like greed rotted my father. But as I drove, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Because the truth is, my parents and Julian lost more than I did. They lost the money, yes. They lost the cars. They lost the house. But they also lost the chance to know their son. They lost the chance to be proud of the doctor I am becoming. They lost the chance to sit at that small, checkered table and feel the warmth of genuine love. They are poor in the only currency that matters. And me? I'm the richest man in the world. Not because of the deed to the cottage or the tuition paid or the future doctor's salary. I am rich because I know who I am. I am Caleb Hansen. I am a survivor. I am a truth teller. And soon I will be a healer. The tuition betrayal didn't break me. It made me. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, but I shared it because I know I'm not alone. Financial abuse is a silent epidemic in families. We are taught that family comes first, and that we should trust our parents implicitly. But as my story shows, sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. Here is the lesson I want you to take away. Trust but verify. Just because someone shares your DNA doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. If something feels wrong, if promises are broken, if money disappears, if you are being gaslighted into believing you are the problem, do not ignore your gut instinct. You have the right to ask questions. You have the right to see the paperwork. You have the right to control your own destiny. My parents used my love and my guilt to manipulate me. They relied on my silence to keep their secrets. Don't give them your silence. Breaking the cycle is scary, but living in a lie is far worse. Now, I want to hear from you. Has anyone in your family ever put money or image above your well-being? Or what is the one red flag you ignored in a relationship that you wish you hadn't? Please leave a comment below with your thought. Or if this story resonated with you, simply comment good or stay strong. Your interaction helps this video reach others who might be trapped in a similar situation and need the courage to speak up. Thank you for being part of my journey today. Stay safe, stay smart, and never let anyone steal your future.